Alrighty, so now we need to finish the base page of page 3. So what we're going to do for that is we have two flaps. We have a left flap and a right flap. The left flap is going to measure 4 by 4.5. And on the 4.5 side, you're going to score, on the 4-inch side, you're going to score at 1/2 inch. Let me just make sure I have the correct piece. Yep, 4 by 4.5. So 4 by 4.5 on the 4-inch side, score at 1/2 inch. Alrighty, and then this is going to go a little bit down from the tippy top of our base page of page 3. So it's going to go about there. And then our right flap on the base page is 3 3/4 by 3 1/4, and on the 3 3/4 side, score at 1/2 inch. Again, this is very customized to this paper collection. There was a cutout from the paper collection that was this size that I wanted to utilize. So it's going to kind of go here-ish, sort of centered with the in the middle of this one, but on the right side. And then of course we have our pocket for the bottom. Alright, so let's go ahead and adhere these guys first. So I'm going to start with a larger flap. I'm going to turn the page this way, just so I have a better vantage point here. And I'm going to put this, again, almost to the top of the page, almost, maybe about 1/8 of an inch down from the top of the page, all the way flush with the right side of the base page. So now that I have that down, I'm going to remove the rest of the backing of the score tape, and then we'll go ahead and give it a nice burnish. So there is flap number 1 for our base page. Flap number 2, as I stated, is going to go about, let's see, about here. So it's going to kind of be centered sort of like that. Now remember, the fold is over here, so you want to make sure that you have it lined up with the fold that we have created here. Alright. Go ahead and pull just a little bit of the backing off. And then I'm just going to kind of put this one down just a little bit so I can sort of see what I'm doing and make sure that I get this where I want it. That looks pretty good. Alright, I think I have it nice and straight. And so what I'm going to do now is just simply stick it down and remove the rest of the backing of the score tape and then give it a nice burnish. So those are our two little flaps. And then of course this all folds over like this. And if you just work on your burnishing a bit, you'll notice that everything will stay in place quite nicely. Alright, let's go ahead and finish with our pocket along the bottom here of the base page. Alright, so what we want to do is I'm going to flip this over. Remember, I've already cut it and pre-cut and punched it. The pocket measures like the other 7.5 by 4, and then on the 7.5 side you score 1/2 inch on each side, and on the 4-inch side you score 1/2 inch. Go ahead and give your tape a nice burnish, and then turn it over, and we're going to be mitering our corners of our pockets. So where those two score lines meet in each corner, just hack it off with your scissors. That'll give us a nice little edge to our corners here. And now I'm going to go ahead and fold on all my score lines here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a little bit of the tape off the sides. So the two short ends, we're going to take just a little bit of tape off. Just the tiniest bit. And again, this is for decoration purposes. This will help us when it's time to add our design paper. This will help us get that design paper down into the pocket so we have a nice seamless transition. I'm now going to remove most of the backing. I'm going to remove the whole thing in just a minute, but I just want to remove a little bit of the backing so I can get this pocket placed. So we're going to line it up along the bottom here. Make sure it's nice and lined up along the bottom, that it's all the way over to the left, and then all the way over to this fold line on the right. That looks really good, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the remainder of the backing of the score tape and then stick it down. Alright, and then here we go. So this will ultimately all fold up like this, and this is what you will see from the front of the page. And of course we still have our pockets clear our side pockets. So this attaches to the hinge, and then we put our nice side photo mat in that side. Now I'm going to want to add some magnets. Again, totally optional. I'm going to add some to my flaps just so they stay nice and tidy. So I'm going to grab just a few magnets here. Again, I do recommend the Studio Gray. I'm sorry, the Basic Gray. Wish I wasn't out of them, but I am. So let's just go ahead and use what we have, right? I'm going to take a little bit of tape and I'm going to put it on this left flap first. All right? Doesn't really matter where. You just don't want to put your magnets too close to the edge of the paper, because then it's a little hard to grip the paper to open the flap, and you might get some bending over extended use of looking through the album. So I tend to put mine in a bit. I'm going to find another magnet, make sure it's matched appropriately to that magnet. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another piece of tape in the opposite direction down over top of the second magnet there. Peel off the tape backing, close the flap, push down, and then slowly peel it, and there we go. If you get a little bit of that there, like you see there, a little bit of that paper kind of stuck to that tape a little bit, it's no big deal because we're going to cover this with design paper or photos or photo mats or whatever, so not a big deal. And then we're going to cover these magnets with score tape again. But don't remove that backing until we are ready to add our design paper. Let's do the same thing with this little flap over here now. So I'm going to add some tape first to the flap itself. Let's move these over. I'm going to kind of burnish that down just with my fingers really quickly here, just to get this going a little faster. I'm going to stick the magnet down on the tape. Grab another magnet, make sure it's matched appropriately to that magnet. And then just keep doing the same thing. Add some tape in the opposite direction. Tear off the backing, put the flap down and push, and then slowly tear it back up. And there you go. Now our magnets are perfectly placed where we want them. I'm going to cover them now with more score tape. Alright, so now we can close these two flaps. I'm going to do the same thing with these little flaps over here. I just want this nice and tidy. That's my only reason for doing this. So what I'm going to do is open up the flaps. Let me pull this over so I'm all on frame here. I'm going to put two magnets on the flaps. All right. Again, it doesn't really matter where on the flaps you put them, just not too close to the edge. All right. I'm going to tear off the backing of the tape if I can. There we go. Alrighty, then we're going to grab two magnets to stick down onto this tape. Then we're going to grab two more magnets, make sure that they're matched appropriately with the magnets that are already stuck down. Go ahead and pair them up, stick them down, then grab some more tape, and then put it the other way. And then go ahead and remove the tape backings. Oops. Okay, there's one, two, and go ahead and close the flaps, push down, and then kind of slowly pull it back. And sometimes it doesn't want to come, and that's okay. That's going to happen. Well, we've been lucky so far. So all I do is I just kind of peel off the tape a little bit from the top magnet. So just peel off that tape a little bit so it's less sticky. Then try again to stick it down. And that's fine because we're going to come back and cover it back up with tape. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. And let's see if this one comes apart. It didn't. It didn't. But again, that's okay. I'm just going to peel off a little bit of the tape again. Not a big deal. As you saw, most of the time it comes up. Every magnet we've done so far, it's come up just fine. But sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. You just kind of unsticky that tape a little bit and keep trying. Sometimes I take it all the way off, so it's not sticking down at all, and then press it down. See if I can get it to stick. There we go. All right. And then we'll just cover that tape up with another piece of score tape. Just like so. Okay, so there we go. So now these are nice and stuck down, and these are nice and stuck down. And I'm going to want to do the same thing to these little guys right here. Again, this is entirely optional. You do not have to do this. I just like everything really nice and tidy. And I also think it's kind of fun, you know, with adding some interaction to the album. But again, totally your decision. So I'm just going to do 2 more magnets here. All right, find its little mate. All right, add some more tape. Let's see if it'll come off this time for us, huh? And it did. See, most of the time it does come off properly. All right, go ahead and cover that up with your score tape. Now we're going to do the same thing to the little magnet up top here on this top flap. That one didn't want to come off, but no big deal. Sometimes it kind of leaves a nice little spot for you, so you can kind of figure out where to place it. Anyway, if it doesn't come all the way off, I'm just going to check and make sure that's correct. Yep, it is. All right, and then we'll go ahead and cover up the tape. See how much easier working with the basic gray ones are when they're already adhered. You don't have to worry about a lot of these steps. All right, so this is page 3. Now, what you can do if you wanted to is you could certainly add 3 magnets along this way to adhere down so this all stays nice and tidy. Again, totally not necessary. A ribbon closure would be beautiful here as well. But for mine, what I did is I, again, just wanted to keep it all really nice and tidy. So I just added 3 little magnets on this far right side. And I'll show you. I put one right here. And I don't want them to match up with any of these or it'll get confusing. So I'm making sure that when I close it, they're not going to hit any of these other magnets. I put one there, and then I put one at the very bottom of this page right here. So see, just 3 little pieces of score tape there for my magnets. Again, this is definitely not necessary at all. This is just something that I like to do to keep everything in place. And oftentimes I'll use prettier closures, you know, ribbons, something like that. But this time around, I just went with the magnets. All right, so we've got 3 stuck down. We're going to take 3 more and match them appropriately with what we've just stuck down. Okay, then we'll take tape again, put it on the top of the little magnet pairs. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and pull the backings off of the tape here. Okay, and then we'll shut this whole panel. Press down, and we hope these will just come off for us nice and easily. That one did. Okay, and then this one didn't quite want to come off. We're going to put it, I can kind of see a groove in the paper where this one goes, so I'm just going to stick it myself down right there. Okay, so now we have all 3 of our little magnets when they're mates in the right place. So then we're just going to go ahead and cover these up with score tape again. And so see, it's okay to put multiple magnets on different areas if you need to. The only problem that you may have is just a little bit of added bulk, but these magnets are very, very thin. So that hasn't really been a problem for me. And like I said, this is an entirely optional step, so don't worry too much about it. Or worry about it at all, really. And a ribbon there would be absolutely beautiful. I just made this one with magnets, but if I could do it again, I probably would do it with a ribbon closure. So now it's all nice and tidy, okay? So there you go. You can hear that little clicks as everything is nicely in place. All right, so that is page 3. And since we've covered up where we wrote page 3, I'm gonna go ahead and put it here as well. So now it's time to flip this over. Remember, we're still on the second base page, but on the back of it now for page 4. See, that's not going anywhere. How nice is that, huh? It's a lot of not cardboard, but cardstock, but those magnets are pretty darn strong, so they're gonna hold it pretty good. All right, so let's go over to page 4. For page 4, let me show you in the finished album what it looks like. It's a pretty simple page. We have this long flap, which again was just designed for this paper collection to utilize this beautiful artistic paper. So this flips up. We have this lovely little spread right here for photo and a little pocket on the inside, and then we have one more flap and then the pocket on the base page. Okay, so pretty simple. All right, so let's go ahead and work on this page next. We are going to start with the top flap. Again, I have everything pre-scored and cut for us. We're going to start with the top flap, which is this piece here, and this measures 7 3/4 by 3 1/2, and on the 7 3/4 side, score at 1/2 inch. Okay, then we're going to want to fold on that score line, give it a nice little burnish. And then this is going to go just about maybe 1/8 inch from the left, but flush up against the top of the page, the base page. So I'm going to take just a little bit off of the backing of the score tape. And then I'm just going to stick it down. And again, I'm about 1/8 inch over from the left side here of the page. Once I know that it's nice and straight, I can remove the rest of that tape backing and stick the whole thing down. Give it a nice little burnish with my bone folder, and we're all set to go on to the next step. And so for that, we are going to next do the large flap, which is this one here. Okay, and this large flap measures 6 1/4 by 6. On the 6 1/4 side, you're going to score at 1/2 inch. On the inside, we're going to add a pocket. That pocket is 5 3/4 by 2 1/4. And we are not going to be folding this pocket. On the inside of this flap here, I didn't want to do a folded with the mitered corner pocket like we've been doing because it's just going to add bulk to this flap. So what I did is I just simply cut a piece of cardstock at 5 3/4 by 2 1/4, and then I ran my punch across the top, and then I just took 1/4 inch score tape. So, because I didn't want the 3/8, I just wanted a little tiny bit of score tape so I can still fit some things behind this pocket. I'm going to go ahead and give this a burnish, and then I'm going to go ahead and attach the pocket to the inside of this large flap. And actually, you want to leave the sides alone. Just take off the long side, or the bottom. All right, and again, that's for decorating purposes. Okay, so we can get our design paper nicely behind this element. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this down. Make sure that it doesn't go over your score line over here, because then the flap won't fold correctly. So I'm actually going to turn mine this way so I can see a little bit better. And then I'm just going to stick this down, make sure it's lined up nicely along the bottom. This one does not want to cooperate, does it? You know what? I'm going to turn it back this way. Sometimes you have to fiddle. Make the paper do what you want it to do, right? There we go. There we go. Okay, so now it's nice and firm against the bottom, but it's still open, and that's on purpose. Okay, now we can go ahead and fold on this flap. See, we did our measuring well. This flap folds perfectly over top of the pocket, which is great. And now this flap is going to go on this side here. All right, So what we want to do, and there's no, a precise measurement for this, so don't worry too much about it. I came down about, if you want to know what I did, about 1/4 of an inch from the top of the page. And we're just lining it up flush with the right edge of this page, okay? So I'm just going to take, again, like I've been doing, just pull a little bit of that backing off. I'm going to turn it this way so I can really see without getting my head in the frame. Make sure I get this nice and lined up. So I'm about 1/4 of an inch from the top, and I am flush against the left side, the right side of this page. That looked great, so I just peeled off the rest of the backing of the score tape, throw that away, and give that a nice burnish. So far we have this long flap and then this little flap here with a little pocket, as you can see here. Okay, so here's our little pocket. All right. Now, we have a small right flap that's going to go here as well. So it's going to go kind of inside of this larger flap. That's why we put the large flap down first. Okay? So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm about maybe, maybe like an 1/8 of an inch again from the top, but I am flush over here to the right, but not over the score line here. Okay, because if you put it over the score line of this flap, then this flap will not close properly. So you want to come in slightly from the score line that you've created with this flap and about 1/8 of an inch down. Does that make sense? So I'm going to go ahead and pull just a little bit of the tape backing off. All right, fold it towards me, and then I'm going to get this where I want it here. So again, I'm about 1/8 of an inch from the top. I am a little tiny bit away from the score line of this flap. You see that? You probably can't see too well on camera, but just make sure when you're doing this at home that you are a little bit away so that this flap closes nicely over top. All right? Mine does, so I'm going to pull the rest of the backing off, and then I will show you again how now this will all close nicely. See that? All right. The last step for page number 4 is to place this little pocket along the bottom. This is a pocket like all of the others on the main base pages. It is 7 1/4 by 4. Score it 1/2 inch on the 7 1/2 inch side. You score it 1/2 inch and it's 7 inch, and on the 4 inch side you score it 1/2 inch. And then of course I have cut, like I showed you with the very first pocket, cut that remainder of the design punch off, applied our score tape. I'm going to turn it over. We're going to miter the corners of our pocket. You guys should be pros at that by now, since I've added so many pockets to this album. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to take just a tiny little bit of tape off of the sides, just like we've been doing, which will help with our decorating. So I'm going to take just a little tiny bit of tape off of the sides. I'm leaving most of that tape backing in place on the side. I'm going to, in a moment, be removing the entirety of the tape from the long bottom of the pocket. But for now, I'm just going to take a little bit off so I can get it nice and centered. But the whole thing's coming off in a sec. Okay. So now we just want to line this pocket up nicely along the bottom of page number 4. So you just want to make sure that it fits nicely right here along the bottom of page number 4. There we go. That looks really good. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the remainder of the backing of the score tape. Always watch your score lines over here where this flap is to make sure it doesn't interfere. Mine doesn't. So my measuring was correct. So the measurements are good, and we can now close this up, and this is what it's going to look like. All right, so we want a couple magnets now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little magnet on this flap here. Again, I can't stress this enough. I don't want everyone to feel like they have to go out and buy a ton of magnets. This is entirely an optional step, okay? There are lots of different ways to keep everything in place. Lots of different ideas for closures. For this one, I was just kind of going through and making this album quickly, and I decided to just use magnets. And they do a great job, don't get me wrong. They do a fantastic job of keeping everything in place, and everything stays nice and tidy. So there is nothing wrong with using magnets, but you don't have to. There are other ideas. Okay, there's that one. I'll cover these up now with a another strip of score tape. And then now this flap is nice and closed. This little flap here, I'm going to do a magnet, and I'm going to start here so I make sure I get it in the right spot. And I'm going to do it about right here. Let me just double check. Yep, that's going to work. I'm going to pull the backing off. I'm going to grab a magnet, stick it down, grab its mate, make sure it's stuck right. Then I'm going to put another piece of score tape, peel off that backing, close this flap now. There we go. Okay. And sometimes when you do that, you do get a little bit of this little tear of paper or whatever. That does not bother me because I'm covering everything up with design paper. So, but it is a lot easier if you're using those basic gray magnets. So now that closes like this. So now we just need a nice little magnet to keep this large flap. I'm not going to come down here because again, it barely covers the pocket and I don't want to put a magnet on the decorative part of our pocket. So I'm going to put the magnet on this little piece right here. I'm going to put it right kind of here in the corner a little bit. Not too close to the edge, but not too far away either. So I'm going to put my magnet down. I need to grab one more magnet. Okay. And then we will just put another piece of tape, close the flap, open it, and then cover these with score tape. Okay, and now everything is in its place. And that is page 4. And because we covered up where I've written down page 4, I'm going to put it on top here so that we can see it. All right, so we've done page 3 and page 4. So we are done with our second base page unit, okay? And so we've now done 4 pages total. So I'm going to move that to the side. Now it's time to grab our third page, pocket page unit. But I'm going to erase the 3 now, and we're going to put page 5 and page 6. Does that make sense? So it's our third pocket page unit, but it's going to be giving us page 5 and page 6. Okay, does that make sense? All right. So for page 5, let me bring over the finished book. This is a very simple page. Okay, so we just have these 2 little flaps, again, customized to this paper collection, and then a pocket. Okay, so that's all that we have over here on page number 6. So this one should come together pretty quick. All right, so let's go ahead and get to it. I'm sorry, page 5. This is page 5. I think I may have just said page 6, but we're on page 5. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so we have these 2 flaps. All right, we have a top flap, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/4. On the 4 1/4 side, you're going to score it 1/2 inch. I'll go ahead and apply your score tape and fold. I'm going to give it a nice burnish, and I'm going to center this. I'm going to eyeball it, but I'm going to center this at the top here. And just in case you do want to measure, I'm about 1/4, let's see, I'm about 1/2 inch on either side. Okay, but again, I'm just going to eyeball mine. I'm going to flip it over so my head's not in the camera range here, or in the camera scene, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just going to center this right along the top of the page, the base page. Okay, that looks nice and good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the rest of the backing and then give it a nice burnish with my bone folder. I now have this left flap, which when we turn the page right, you can definitely see it's the left flap, and it's going to go here. Okay, and again, this is very customized to this particular paper. So this one measures 5 7/8 by 3 3/4. On the 5 7/8 side, you're going to score at 1/2 inch. Okay, go ahead and fold that over, give it a nice burnish. I'm going to remove just a little bit of the backing of the score tape. Fold it out towards me. I'm going to flip the page this way. I'm going to come down about 1/4 inch from the top, and I'm lining this up with the left edge of this page. I got it lined up, removing the remainder of the score tape and giving it a nice burnish. So there's our 2 little flaps. Okay, and then the last thing to do is to adhere our pocket. Just like the others, our pocket measures 7.5 by 3 3/4. You score on the 7.5 side at 1/2 inch and 7 inch, and on the 3 3/4 side at 1/2 inch. Apply your score tape, flip it over, miter your corners. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and give these guys, these sides here, a nice fold. I'm going to only, like we've been doing, remove just a little bit of tape from the short ends of the pocket. So just a little tiny bit there and a little tiny bit here. And then I'm going to remove the entirety of the bottom, but just a tiny bit for right this second. Just a tiny bit for right this second. Okay. This way I can get this nice and lined up here at the base of our base page, number 5. All right, and it fits perfectly. Let me just scooch it just a tiny bit. Okay, great. All right, so now I'm just going to remove that backing, score it, push it, stick it down rather, and then use my bone folder to get a nice little burnish. I'm going to use 4 magnets on this. Actually, I'm only going to use 3 magnets on this page. My mistake. When you can share a magnet space, do it, because it will cut down on the bulk of your album, and it will also save you with magnets. So these 2 flaps are going to share the same base magnet. So I'm just going to eyeball it and get it about where I want it, and then put a little pencil mark. So I know that if I put a magnet on the bottom of the base page about here, as you can see, I put a little mark right there. Didn't mean to put a mark over here. That will accommodate both of those flaps. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tear off a little bit of tape and just stick it right over that dot, tear off the backing, stick a magnet down, find a match. I'm going to do the left side first, the left flap rather first. So I'm just sticking some tape on top, pulling off the backing, pull that up. So now we have our left flap done. And then I'm going to grab my tape and do the same thing, but now we're going to pull down the top flap instead. Forgot to oh my goodness, guys, it's getting late. I forgot to put the other magnet on. So the tape transferred just fine, but the other magnet didn't go with it. All right. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, so now I have my magnets where they need to be. Woo! All right. So let's go ahead and cover these up with another piece of score tape. Remember, we will remove the backing of this top piece of score tape once we begin applying our designer papers, our photos, that kind of thing. All right, so this goes here, and now that's all nice and tidy and it's not going anywhere, and those flaps are going to stay nice and in place for us, okay? So now we can flip it over and we are on page 6. We are moving right along. Let me show you page 6 in the finished book. Page 6 was again designed solely with this paper collection in mind. So we have a flap here on this left side, okay? And then we have a little flap here for a little 3x4 photo. We have a flap here up top and a flap here to the side, and then our pocket right here. All right? So not too complicated, but there are a few moving pieces, so let's go ahead and get started. Our left flap, let me grab my page 6 stack of materials here. All right. Our left flap, the largest flap here, okay, is 6 by 8.5, and on the 6-inch side you're going to score at 1/2 inch. All right, you're going to apply your score tape. Let's go ahead and give it a fold on that score line, burnish it down, and this is just going to go right up on the left edge of our base page number 6. So I'm going to turn it this way, and I'm going to remove just a little bit of the backing of the score tape so I can get this nice and lined up. Again, flush with the left side of this base page, okay? So I've gone ahead, I want to make sure that it's nice and even along the top, bottom, and side. That looks good. I'm going to pull off the remainder of the score tape and give it a nice burnish. Now, on the inside of this left flap, we have a little flap that is 3 1/4 by 4. Let me just make sure. Nope, that's not. I'm sorry, 3 1/2 by 4. Nope. Must be this one. 3 1/2 by 4. Yep. And this is going to go on this side here. So this is 3.5 by 4 inches. On the 3.5 side, you score it 1/2 inch. Okay, apply your score tape, give it a nice burnish. And now I'm just going to take a little bit of the backing off of the back of the score tape. I am going to come down about 1 inch. Doesn't really matter. It really doesn't matter. Just whatever looks visually appealing to your eye. And I'm just going to just make sure it's flush up against the left side of this flap. Okay, so that's that little flap right there. Okay, now for the base page, we have a left flap, which is 4.5 by 3, which I believe is this one. Let me just double check. Nope. It's this one, 4.5 by 3. And this one is going to go up top here, like so. Okay, so let's go over this measurement one more time. This is 4.5 by 3 inches. On the 4.5 side, you're going to score it 1/2 inch. And then it's just going to go about maybe 1/8 inch from the fold that we've created with this flap, but it's going to be flush along the top. So I'm going to turn mine upside down just so it's a little bit easier to see. I'm going to tear off a little bit of that score tape, and it's going to go right here. Just like so. Okay. Just remember to stay a little bit in from that score line. Now I'm going to turn it back this way. We have a right flap, which is a 3.5 by 3 3/4. So it's 3.5 by 3 3/4. On the 3.5 side, you score it 1/2 inch. Go ahead and fold. You would apply your score tape. And then this is going to go about here. So there's going to be a little bit of space in between. All right. And I'm about maybe 1 inch or so from the top, but I'm flush up against the right side of this base page. Okay. So I'm going to remove a little bit of the tape backing, and then I'm going to go ahead and stick this down. Just about here. Really doesn't matter. You just don't want it too low where it's going to interfere with that pocket that we have on our base pages, but you know, it doesn't really matter where except for that one little caveat. And then finally we have this large pocket that's going to go here at the bottom of our base page. Like the others, it's 7.5 by 3.5. You score it 1/2 inch on all 3 sides. I've already done the punching. Let's turn it over and miter the corners of the pocket. You guys should be a pro at corner mitering by now, right? All right, and then we can go ahead and fold on our score lines again, and I'm just going to remove just a little tiny bit of the tape on the short ends. Just a little bit of it, not a whole lot. Still leaving most of that tape backing in place. And then I'm going to remove the entirety of the long side, but just a little bit for this moment, because I'm going to make sure I get it nice and straight here. Okay, so let's see here. I'm going to line it up against the right side of this base page. That will help ensure that I do not go over the score line on the left. I didn't cut this pocket that great, so I'm going to fix that really quickly. There we go. And then I'm going to try this one more time. Let's see. Right up against the right side here of this base page. Don't go too far to the left because you don't want to cross over that score line. Okay. That looks good. Alright, so now I can tear off the remainder of the backing of the score tape and then give it a nice burnish with my bone folder. Remember, it's still open most of the way on the sides. That is intentional. Okay, so this is going to fold up like this, and this is going to be page 6. I'm going to go ahead and write page 6 since I've covered it up on this flap here. Now, you can certainly add magnets to these flaps. I did in my book, but I think you guys get the idea of how to add the magnets at this point, so I'm going to leave that step off for the camera just so the rest of this video can go a little bit faster. But I added them just to my little flaps, just so they stay nicely in place. Optional, up to you completely. All right, so we have done page 5 and page 6. So we are done with our third base page unit, and we are now on to our last one, which is exciting. So this is our 4th base page unit, which gives us pages 7 and 8. So I'm going to go ahead and write that on the inside, or on the top, the front rather, of this page unit. Page 7 has a little bit of stuff going on. So let me show you what it looks like. It's not hard, but let me show you what it looks like in the finished book. It's just got some moving parts. None of it's difficult. It's similar to another page that we've already done, but it's a little bit different. So we have this little flap here and this pocket here on this flap. This flap opens. This is open here for a photo, and then it opens one more time for a nice little spread there. Okay, and then the base page just has this pocket. Okay, so this is what we're going to be making for page 7. Again, not hard, just a few moving pieces we have to deal with. So let's go ahead and get that done. So let's start with our right flap. Let me bring over my page 7 materials. All right. So for page 7, we have our right flap, and I'm going to need to measure these just to make sure I have the right one. There's 2 right flaps, remember. You want to do the inside one first, which is going to be 4.5 by 8.5. And on the 4.5 side, you score it 1/2 inch. Okay? And this is the one that's going to go here. And then the second flap is a little bit smaller, and it goes here. So it's going to kind of lay out like that. Does that make sense? So start with your larger piece first. If you look at the cut list below, it's the 4.5 by 8.5, score on the 4.5 side at 1/2 inch. Go ahead and fold over on your score line, give it a nice little burnish. I'm going to tear off just a little bit of the tape backing. And then what I'm going to do is just butt this right up against, line it up right against the edge of this base page. So you just want to make sure you have it nice and lined up. And this is why I leave the backing on for most of it for just a moment, so I can really make sure that I have it nice and lined up exactly where I want it before I tear that remainder of that backing off, and then I'm committed. Now I'm committed and it looks good. Okay. All right. Now we want to open this flap up and add this second flap, and this one's just a tiny bit smaller. It's 4 inches by 8.5 inches, and on the 4-inch side we've scored at 1/2 inch. Okay, so it's just a 1/2 inch smaller than the first flap, and it's going to be placed right here up against the far edge of this flap we just created. Okay, so I'm going to pull just a little bit of the tape backing off, and then we're just going to get it nice and lined up here on the edge of this flap. Stick it down, wiggle it till I get it exactly where I want it. Okay, and then go ahead and pull the remainder of the backing off. And there we go. Okay, so now we have our 2 little flaps, and this will eventually close up like this. On top of this now, put both flaps in the closed position. Okay, you might want to go ahead and give it a nice burnish so that paper gets used to going where it's supposed to go. Again, we've left our pockets, our side pockets open. All the taping was done on the top of the page so we don't close up that pocket. All right, so now with both of those 2 flaps we just created closed, we're going to add a little pocket right here. And that pocket is 4 inches by 3.5. And what I did with this is cut it wrong, I think. Let's see, what did I do? Let's go ahead and add the flap first, and then I'll fix the pocket. Here's our little flap that's going to go up top here, still with the flaps, all flaps closed. Okay, we have this little flap here. This is 3.5 by 4 on the 3.5 inch side. We've scored at 1/2 inch. We're just going to butt this up about 1/8 inch from the top, and then butt up against the left-hand side of this flap. Okay, so right about there. Now, when I was pre-cutting, I messed up on this pocket, so let's fix it really quick. It's supposed to be 4 by 3, let's see. It needs to be 5 by 3 and, no, 5 by 4. Okay, so let me just cut a piece really quick, no big deal. I'll just cut a piece of cream cardstock quickly here. Let me grab some. 5 by 3.5. 4, I think we said, didn't we? 5 by 4. And then I'm just going to use the scoring blade on my paper trimmer just to make it go a little quicker. I'm going to score 1/2 inch on 3 sides. The 2 short sides and 1 long side. So this should work. Let me just fold it first and make sure that it fits, that I cut it right. And I did. So now we're going to go ahead and punch it really quickly. And this is the punch that we've been using. I had pre-punched everything, but again, I just accidentally cut this one wrong. So we're just going along here. And I'm just going to punch this for you on camera. All right. If you've never used these punches before, they are so easy to use. You have a guide and you just line everything up. And there you go. Shake off the excess. Okay, now this is what I did on the very first pocket. If you'll recall, we need to cut off the little tops of the decoration. So I'm just going to cut down to where it comes over and then cut it over like that. I do the same thing here, just cut over and then cut down like so. Okay, and then we can go ahead and apply our score tape real quick. And I apologize for cutting this wrong, guys. I'm not sure what happened. I need to fix that on the cutting guide too, don't I? Let's see. Here's my little ripper here. Okay. I will go pencil that in just a sec so you guys have the right measurements on the cutting guide. Got to open a new score tape. No problem, because I have plenty. Like I've said, 3/8 is my favorite size for mini bookmaking. Love it, love it, love it. Go through it like crazy, but I love it. All right, so let's come around. Let's just finish adding the score tape really quick. Add it here as well. All right. Now what we want to do is go ahead and burnish this tape down. I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to miter our corners like we've done with all of our little pockets. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is just tear a tiny bit of the backing of the short sides off like we've been doing on all of our pockets. No surprises anymore for pockets, right? And then we're going to want to tear off all of this, but I'm just going to do a little bit right now. Actually, I messed up and have 2 separate things, so I'm just going to tear the whole thing off and we'll be fine. Okay, so now let's go ahead and adhere this pocket down, flush to the bottom of this little flap here. And there we go. Okay, so that is what that is going to look like. You can discard this that I miscut. Okay, so we have this little flap here, we have a pocket here, and then this flap, and then this flap. So we have this nice spread here for photos and things. The last thing to do is on this base page of page 7 is to add our large pocket at the bottom. So what I'm going to do, and oh my gosh, I really did not pay attention very well when I was prepping this because I forgot to put the tape on the sides here as well of the large pocket. So let me just do that really quickly here. All right, then we will go ahead and miter our corners of this pocket. So flip it over, go ahead and miter your corners of your pocket, and then tear just, you know the drill now, tear just a little bit of tape off from the sides. By the way, this main pocket is 7 1/4 by 4, score on all 3 sides at 1/2 inch. The pockets are mostly the same size, but sometimes I altered them a little bit, like for this one, because I have this pocket here, I altered this one just a little bit, so it kind of just looked a little bit more visually appealing. So that's why I've provided separate measurements for each page, just in case I did a little altering of the pocket. So now what we want to do is adhere this pocket to the bottom of base page number 7. All right, and what we want to do is just make sure that it's flush with the bottom of the page, that it goes all the way to the left, and that it does not go over the score line of our flaps on the right. Yep, perfect. So I'm going to scooch that up just a tiny little sliver. Perfect. Okay, now we can remove the backing and give it a nice little burnish with our bone folder. And here we go. So what I would do is I would probably add magnet to this little flap and then a ribbon closure or something pretty to just hold this all nice and tidy on top of the base page. But again, I've added so many magnets already that I won't take your time to do that. So this is page 7. We are now on page 8. We are moving right along and we are almost done. Let me show you page 8 from the finished book. It's another one of those side envelopes like we did before. So this opens up here, and this is just for enjoying the beautiful paper for my particular book. You can design yours however you like. And then you open it up here. We have a flap here and a flap up here. All right. Again, customized to the different cutouts from this particular paper collection. And then we simply have a pocket here. So we have a little envelope, side envelope, and then on the inside of the left flap we have 2 more flaps. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So here is page 8, materials. We're going to start with our right flap, which is this one here. It is 4 inches by 8.5 inches. On the 4-inch side, you're going to score at 1/2 inch. Go ahead and score on, or fold rather, on that score line. I'm going to use my corner rounder while I have it off before I adhere it. It's just a little easier. And round the little corners of the flap. That's, of course, optional. And then we want to stick this flush up against the right side of page number 8. So it's going to go right here like so. So what I'm going to do, again, is I'm just going to tear a little bit of that backing off. And then stick it down. Again, it's just flush up against this left side. I'm sorry, the right side of our base page. That is looking good. So I'm going to tear off the remainder of the score tape backing. Now we have our left flap, which is 6 inches by 8.5, and on the 6-inch side we are scoring at 1/2 inch. And this, of course, is going to go here. This is going to be the other end of the envelope. So what we want to do is butt this up against the left side of our base page number 8. So again, I'm just going to take a little bit of the score tape backing off, fold it out towards me, and then I'm just going to line this up. And then before I commit too much, I just want to make sure that it's perfect, that it's nice and straight and perfect. So what I'm going to do, and I can already tell it's not, so I'm going to lift it back up real quick. All right, let's try again. Okay. What I'm doing is I'm making sure that it's straight along the side, the top, the bottom, and I even like to fold this down. And it's a little wonky, so let me try again. Yep, perfect. Do you see how I did that? So folding that down will really help you make sure you have this perfectly in place. So let me just scooch it now, just a little tiny bit. Got a little bit off. I'm going to scooch it, and then I'm going to try one more time. Yep, looks good. Remove that backing. Okay. And that just helps you get it all nice and straight. I'm going to go ahead and burnish it with my bone folder. Now on the inside of this left flap, we have 2 flaps. We have a left flap and a top flap. The left flap is 4 3/4 by 6 1/4. It's this one right here, I believe. Let's just double check the measurements. 4 3/4 by 6 1/4. On the 4 3/4 side, we've scored at 1/2 inch. And we're just going to fold on that score line there. And then I'm just going to put this sort of centered here on this flap like so. So I'm going to turn the whole page structure this way. I'm going to tear off just a little bit of that tape backing. And then I am going to, and I'm just eyeballing here, I'm going to put this about right here, just lining it up, centering it along the edge of this flap, this left flap. Tear off the backing. Okay. Give that a nice little burnish. Now we have a top flap as well. This flap measures 3 3/4 by 4 3/4, and on the 3 3/4 side we're going to score at 1/2 inch. And this is just going to go centered here along the top of this flap. I'm going to turn mine upside down just because it's a little easier for me to see so I can get it centered. Again, I'm just eyeballing this, and I'm just centering it right here along the top of this flap. Like so. Okay, there we go. So these two flaps are here and then here and then here. So that's this page so far. The last step is we have our pocket here on the to put on the bottom of page 8. Okay, so for that, what I've already done, this is 7.5 by 4. You score on the 7.5 inch side at 1/2 inch on each side, and on the 4 inch side at 1/2 inch. Flip it over. We're going to miter the corners of these pockets. Okay, I'm going to tear off just a little bit of the small sides of the backing of the score tape. Okay, and then I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to tear off just a little bit for right now, but this whole thing is coming off in a minute. All right. Okay, just tear it off like that. All right, and then we just want to line this up with the bottom of page 8, making sure we have score lines on either side, right? On the left side and the right side. We want to make sure that the edges of this pocket, the ends of this pocket, do not go over either of those score lines, or else our flaps won't bend correctly. So that is looking good. You can give it a little test. That side's perfect. Let me fold these here. That side's perfect. All right, so now we can remove this backing. All right, give it a nice little burnish with our bone folder, and there we go. In terms of magnets or other closures, whatever ideas you have for closures, I did magnets, and I did one here. These two, I only did 3 on this side because these 2 little pages shared a base magnet. So I saved myself a magnet there and just did 3. And then I put 3, just like we did for the first side envelope, I put 3 here to keep this nice and tidy. And that is page 8. So we are all done with our pages that go inside the book. Before we do the inside back cover of our book, let's go ahead and adhere all of our pages to our book. So we have page 7 and 8, page 5 and 6, page 3 and 4, and page 1 and 2. So now what we're going to do, and again, if you've already adhered yours to the book like we've talked about before, then you ignore this step and then just fast forward until we get to the inside back cover. All right, so what I like to do first is I always like to just what I call dry fit. I like to put the pages on the hinges just to make sure, without removing any adhesive, so it's a dry fit, just to make sure that it's going to fit. And mine is going to fit very nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out a little bit because this is a lot for to be in the camera range here. Okay. I am going to remove just a little bit of the backing of the score tape on either side of this first hinge, and I'm just going to fold it out like that. Do you guys see what I did there? All right. Now it's time to start putting this first page on. I like to turn my pages. Let me get my score tape out of the way there. I like to turn my book so it's facing me. I just find that that's a little bit easier to get everything in place. And then you want to put that page down. You don't want to go farther though than the actual little score line of the hinge. And it's kind of almost impossible to do that anyway just because of the structure, but just make sure you don't go down further than that hinge. Now once I have it in place, I want to fold it down and make sure that it lays nicely down, and it does. So what I'm going to do now then is I'm going to go ahead and remove the score tape backing on this first hinge, the first side of the hinge, and then I'm going to fold it down. And now I'm going to turn it this way, make sure I'm happy with everything, and I'm going to pull the backing off of this side like so. Okay, and then make sure that that's nice and snug and fits. Okay, now we have our second page unit, which houses pages 3 and 4. I'm going to dry fit it again just to make sure that it's going to go on right. Nothing worse than taking that tape off, sticking it down, and realizing you made a mistake. So, all right, that's going to look great. So what I'm going to do is, again, the same exact thing. I'm just going to pull a little bit of the backing off on either side of this hinge. And I'm folding it outwards so it'll be easy to grab once I have my page in place. It wants to stick to it though, so sometimes you have to kind of force it. All right, now I'm going to take my page Again, this is our second page unit, housing pages 3 and 4. I'm going to fit it over the hinge and put it all the way down to the base of the hinge, not past that, right? So I have it roughly in place. Always fold it down. Make sure, and you guys see here, make sure that your pages line up like a real book does. That's just going to help you be really happy with your design. My pages line up, so I'm going to lift it straight up again and remove the backing of the first side of the hinge of the score tape. I'm going to fold it down, and I'm going to remove I'm going to turn it this way now. Hold it up a little bit and pull the backing off the other side of the hinge, and then make sure that's nice and stuck down, and it is. So now look how beautiful these lay on top of each other. Really, really pretty. Same thing now with our third page unit, which houses pages 5 and 6. Okay, I'm going to dry fit just to make sure that it's going to work. I'm going to turn it this way. It's just a little bit easier for me to see what I'm doing. Okay. Yep, and that's going to look really good. You can see when I fold it down that the pages are nice and lined up at the top and the bottom, so I think that's going to work great for us. So now we're just going to take a little tiny bit of the score tape backing off either side of the top of the hinge, and then just fold that out. Okay, just fold it out. And then we will do the same thing we've been doing. We'll get this page on here. Maybe. This one's fighting me a little bit. There we go. Okay. So I've got the page down. Fold it down. Yep, that's beautiful how it lines up the top and bottom with its other pages. So I'm going to lift it back up, keeping it in place firmly with my left hand, and I'm removing the rest of the backing of the score tape. I'm going to do the same thing now with the other end, which has actually gone back inside of it. That happens sometimes. So I'm going to grab, if I can find it, if not I'll just use my fingernail. There's my little, I just call it a pick tool, and I'm just going to use it to grab the backing of the score tape. It didn't stay, there we go. Okay, I'm going to lift it back up and then pull. There we go. Okay. And see how beautiful these are laying down. They're all nice and lined up with each other. All right, which is exactly what we want. Now it's time to adhere our final page unit, which houses pages 7 and 8. I'm going to dry fit, make sure it's going to fit on here for us. And it is. That looks good. So what we're going to do is we're going to, again, just do the same thing. Tear a little bit of that score tape backing off on either side of that hinge. All right, and then we are going to get this page on this hinge. Okay, so once I've got it down, I'm going to fold it down again. Make sure everything is nice and lined up. Okay, I am happy with that, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the backing. There we go. Perfect. Then I'm going to pick it up and then do this other end, or the other side rather, of the hinge. Get that score tape backing off. Okay, and now we have all 4 of our pages in. They line up very nicely. You can see from either direction they're lining up very nicely on top of each other. And as we flip through here, you can see all your hard work and how pretty it looks. So now the last thing to do for this video is we are going to do the inside back cover. Let me show you on the finished album what the inside back cover looks like. Okay, this is the inside back cover of the finished album. As you can see, we have a small waterfall here, and then we have a pocket, and that's it. This is just a photo mat. These are just photo mats. Okay, now we are not going to be doing the waterfall right now. You have to wait and do the waterfall when you have your design paper ready to go and down. Okay, so we're not going to do the waterfall right now. We're just going to do the pocket. I have the measurements for you for the waterfall and your cut list below, so go ahead and cut them, score them, to, you know, put the tape on, get them ready to go, but we're not going to adhere them at this time. You need 4 of these. They are 4.5 by 3 inches, and on the 4.5 side you'll score at 1/2 inch, and then on all 4 of them you'll place your score tape on that end there. We will be working with the waterfall and getting this adhered when we get to part 3 of this video tutorial series. So all we need to do for this this part of the tutorial is adhere this pocket, and then we are done. So I'm going to go ahead and miter the corners of the pocket. By the way, this pocket measures 7 3/4 by 4, and then you're just scoring at 1/2 inch on the 3 sides. I'm now mitering the corners of the pocket. Throw those away. And then what I'm going to do is, like we've been doing, I'm going to fold on these score lines here. I'm going to remove just a little bit of tape from the short edges, the short sides. Just a little bit. All right, and then I'm going to remove all of this right now, but for just a second, just a little bit of it, so I can get this centered. And then all you want to do, just like we did with the inside front cover, is center this flush with the bottom of that cover piece that we laid in video number 1. All right, and then flush with the bottom and sides of that piece. All right, that looks really good, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this off. Okay, so it's open at the top, which is planned and on purpose. And there we go. Again, we'll do the waterfall pieces once we get our design paper down. Okay, guys, so that is it. That is part 2 of this tutorial, which is making the different page styles and customizing it to create our flaps and our pockets. I don't know what I got on my book here. When you're working with cream cardstock, you definitely want to keep your work surface clean. I was stamping earlier, and I think I got a little bit of ink on the cover of this book. No big deal, I'm going to cover it with design paper, but just a little tip. You might want to not stamp while you're working on this at the same time. So anyway, this is just kind of a quick flip through of what we have before we do the fun decorations, which is always a super fun part as well. I do love the designing part. I love creating the different pages, the page styles, planning where to put the photos and that sort of thing. But adding that design paper sure is fun too, isn't it? It's so much fun. And like I said, you probably want to add magnets or some closures to these other ones. I just didn't want to take up the time since I've already added so many. I think you guys get the idea. And then here we are at our last page. All right, so that is it, guys. This is the end of part 2 of the video tutorial series for the making of the Lady's Diary. And then our 3rd and final video will be decorating the album, which again is very customized to this particular paper pack. So if you're using this album idea for a different paper, you might not want to watch the next video tutorial, and that's fine. But I did want to show how I decorated this particular album with this paper. So there we go, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Part 3 will be coming very soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.